To build your executive presence. In the digital world that we are now operating in, the most successful leaders are the individuals who have world-class communication and influencing skills, or what we call executive presence. However, developing elite communication skills is often overlooked by many leaders. Yet research shows that it is one of the main reasons why poor culture and performance exists. We will explore and unpack how small changes in your executive presence can have a massive impact on your team's culture and performance. This live stream is conducted by EIY and also our guest speaker, Mr. Mark. Mark has over 12 years of experience as communication program designer, executive coach, and presentation skills coach. His clients are based all around the globe, which has Mark working across several different sectors, including finance, banking, design, media, IT, managed service, and professional sports. To date, he has trained and coached over 3,000 individuals around the globe. He is also a Neuro Coach Institute in neuroscience, CETA certification coaching performance coaching and skills. He is also a trainer at Dale Carnegie and Associates Licensed Executive Coaching Certificate 2010. Hello, Mr. Mark. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lana. And how are you today?
I'm good. I hope you're
Good.
good as well.
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you.
All right. Let's dive into our topic. The first question is, what is executive presence and why is executive presence something we should really be thinking about and developing?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. Executive presence is such an important thing because if we look at the world that we're now operating in, everything is about digital transformation, right? There's always new innovations that our organizations and IT departments are creating and implementing. And as a result of leaders, we're generally those individuals who have to drive those digital transformations. And guess what? The one thing that really gets people to buy into change and more importantly, be able to connect with what you're asking them to do is executive presence. Now, interestingly enough, executive presence is something that people, if you ask somebody, what is executive presence?
Yeah.
Generally, they'll give you a couple of answers. But realistically, I think just because of the world that we're now operating in, it really is a critical part of our leadership capability that we need to hone and truly improve on.
Mhm. So, in one sentence, how can you understand executive presence?
Oh, that's a pretty good question. I think the way that we can understand executive presence is it's all about really three things. It's how you connect with people, it's how you present your ideas and your thinking, and it's more importantly how you drive collaboration and business results. That's really what executive presence really encompasses.
Mm. Can I understand executive presence as visibility?
Well, if you have it, you will certainly show up. I think one of the things that people always talk about, if I ask my clients, if you think of somebody who's an effective leader and communicator, and you go, well, if they have executive presence, how would you know that they have it? And people tend to say things like, Mark has lots of confidence. He has charisma when he communicates. He's very strong in terms of presenting his ideas and thinking. And the thing is, all of those things are true. But what people didn't realize that, you generally see something, you go, wow, I wish I had that person's approach. I wish I could have some of their executive presence. And it was almost like people didn't feel like it was something they could develop themselves. And I think this was a very interesting process for me. About 2 years ago, I came across some really amazing research, which actually took the concept of executive presence and for the first time really unpacked it in its entirety. And I think that's where it was a very revealing thing because initially everybody thought it's all about how you communicate and how you present your ideas. But in actual fact, it's way deeper than just literally how you present your ideas and how you come across.
Mm. Some people say that it matters, that is the way you communicate, but not about the content that you communicate. How is it relevant to executive presence, Mark?
Well, look, I think that the reality is
Mm.
all the research shows that how you say words. So, for
Yeah,
example, one of the classic things I see a lot of people going is they'll go into their office. Say, for instance, they're a sales manager, and
yeah.
this is how they'll say, they go, "Guys, I'm really excited about how well everybody is doing." But if you
Mm.
listen to the person's tonality, what they're saying and their tone of voice doesn't match. There's a disconnect. And when you start working on your executive presence, what you'll tend to see, which is very different, is the person now will say that exact same sentence, but they'll go, "Guys, wow, I'm absolutely blown away on how all of you have done amazing things as a team." Now, it's almost exactly the same words, but it's how we say those words. Where this is what's interesting. When the research goes further back into the development of human beings, they actually found that there's a lot of nonverbal cues that we use to identify if this person's being trustworthy, if they're being authentic, and if it's something that we should really be believing in what they say. And this is what's really interesting, I find when I work with a lot of my clients. They're very good at creating great PowerPoint slides. They're very good at coming up with some really powerful words. But here's the interesting thing. I go, well, okay, how much time did you spend creating all those things? Oh, 95% of my time in preparation for my big speech was doing all of those things. And I said, well, how much have you actually practiced delivering those words? And then there's silence. And I
Mm.
think that's really where people are missing the trick is it's not really all about these great words. It's about how you deliver them. And I think that's where executive presence really allows people to stand out from their peers and from their competition. Because what's the biggest challenge for many of us? We want to improve how we can connect with senior stakeholders. Because in the end, how do we raise our profile? How do we drive change? How do we create an inclusive culture? Well, generally, that's about trying to convince senior managers that this is something we need to do. Because let's be honest, millennials and Generation Zs are now running organizations. We are the middle managers and the people who are doing everything in organizations. And the thing is, if we start to develop executive presence early on in our careers, guess what? We climb the ladder very, very, very quickly because we show up in meetings, we'll feel confident to share our ideas and our opinions, and we're able to do it in an effective way.
Mm. What are some that professionals are facing whenever they would like to develop their executive presence?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
Okay. What are some challenges
Yeah.
that professionals are facing whenever they would like to develop their executive presence?
Well, classically enough, analytical introverts and even extroverts go, well, I think people just have it. I don't know how to develop it. So they assume it's just something that people are born with, right?
Mm.
But the reality is, as I said, if you look at executive presence, I said it was in those three different things. Area number one, it's how you connect with people.
Yeah.
So, what do we mean by that? It's how you build trust, how you allow people to feel relaxed, and more importantly, how you give them a platform to want to connect and speak to you. So, that's the first thing. So, we have to realize if we can start to work on our people skills and how we're able to connect those, that's your first bit of developing
Mm.
executive presence.
Yeah.
Second area, it's then about your ability to present your ideas in a clear and concise way. Well,
Mm.
guess what? If you haven't practiced what you were going to say and you're just thinking off at the top of your head in a very stressful moment, what
Yeah.
tends to happen? Right? We've got lots of adrenaline running through us.
Yeah.
What happens when we've got a lot of adrenaline running through us, Lenan?
Oh goodness, it's really hard. It's just like that you have a big pressure and your heart is bumping and it's
Your communication increases, so you start talking at a million miles an hour. Da, 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 da. You're not breathing. For some people, some of that adrenaline stress is so bad they lose the ability to communicate because
mm,
all their muscles are so tense. So one of the things about developing your executive presence is the idea of understanding how to be clear and concise. Especially
mm,
for some of us who are quite technical, we tend to bore people with too much technical jargon. So it's also about trying to understand who my audience is, and more importantly, what is the important bits of the information rather than I have to share every single point on a particular thing. And then finally, the third part is all about driving collaboration. It's all about delivering strategic business results. So it's all great to be flashy and charismatic, but if you're not actually funnily being able to put all these things together and weave them together in terms of driving change and getting people to want to be a part of a journey, then that's the final missing link. So interesting enough, when I work with a lot of my clients, they maybe have one. If they're lucky, they're competent in 2 out of those 3 areas. So the reality is for probably many of us, if not 95% of the world's working population, would really actually require to develop their executive presence, because it's going to allow you to stand out.
I see. Sometimes it's really hard to connect with people. Why is that, and how can we develop that point?
Yeah, well, I think so many times it's difficult to connect with people because sometimes we give them too much reputation. So, for example, if there's a senior person in the room, we immediately start making a whole bunch of negative assumptions, right? That this person's too busy, they don't know who I am, what am I going to say to them? And before we've even gone up to try and shake their hand and introduce ourselves, we're convinced that it's going to fail. So I think that's firstly the biggest challenge we've got to start to overcome is we've got to realize that the person in the room is another human being. They're not a rock star. They're not some sort of person that's aloof to you. And all you have to do, guess what? People love talking about themselves. That's it. Human beings feel a lot more comfortable when they have to do the talking. So instead of feeling like you have to be this vivacious, incredible person trying to get their attention, just ask them a very revealing and important question. And that in itself will start them to start the conversation. And guess what? When they're talking for a while, your likability increases. And the research shows that when someone has a likable connection with you in a very quick space of time, they're going to want to collaborate. They're going to want to continue to talk to you. And then they start asking questions like, oh my God, I haven't asked you any questions. And then they start coming towards you. So I think that's got to be the biggest challenge is you've got to realize that making the first commitment, as much as it is a challenge, stop overhyping it. Your imposter syndrome is potentially getting in the way. Just realize that you're speaking to another human and just try and connect and be authentic. I think that as a start will really allow you to start to connect with some more people and probably more senior people.
It means that at first just become an active listener first.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe the thing that you can prepare, if you know there's a particular person you would like to speak to, guess what? Do a little bit of research. Find out what's happening in their world. They might have been involved in a number of different projects or whatever it might be. That's your opportunity to maybe ask that question and going, Mark, wow, it's nice to meet you. Can you tell me a little bit more about this executive presence project you're working on? Immediately, it's going to allow me to feel quite comfortable and to talk about something that I might be quite proud about. So immediately it creates really great rapport. And initially, we've got a strong first connection. And let's be honest, first impressions, unfortunately, do last.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And that is how people feel and think about you.
100%, right? And I think the interesting thing is perception is reality. So if they perceive you in a certain way, irrelevant if that was your intention or not, that's how they're going to operate and connect with you in that way.
More in case that we don't have executive presence, what is the impact of those disadvantages in your career?
Well, to be honest, people tend to stagnate. If you have any listeners here who think, I don't know why I'm not being noticed for promotion. I don't know why nobody seems to listen to my ideas.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm too scared to even put myself out there. Well, guess what? That's what happens when we haven't developed our executive presence. So the reality is, if you're an individual who wants to raise your profile, if you're an individual who wants to put your hand up for a promotion, and if you're an individual who wants to be a part of the drive and change of your organization, the reality is developing strong executive presence capability is the quickest way for you to stand out. There was research recently that an organization did. Who was it? It was Business Insider. They did a lot of research with senior HR directors from the world's leading organizations. And they asked these HR directors, how important is executive presence? And they said, beyond your technical capability, So, for example, all the things that you've studied and all the experience you had from a technical perspective, they said it was probably the second or third most important thing that they looked for when
Yeah.
they were trying to hire leaders into those type of organizations. So if
Yeah.
you're a person who really wants to take your career and start working for the world's leading organizations, guess what? They're going to look out for your executive presence. So if you're in the interview stage, if they're asking their colleagues if you're the right person for the role, one of the prerequisites that they're going to be asking and talking about is, does this individual demonstrate that they've got strong executive presence? So it really is something we've actually got to start to realize. If I don't have this in my capability, I should start trying to work on it as soon as possible.
Yeah. How can we distinguish executive presence and confidence?
How can we distinguish the executive presence and what?
And confidence.
Confidence. Well, I don't think you can distinguish it. Look, confidence is part of executive presence. It's part of what you need. I think, but it's only one part. I can be a confidence individual, but if I don't have strong relationship skills and I don't connect with my audiences, then guess what? My confidence gets me nowhere. I can be a confident individual, but if you put me in a situation that's outside my comfort zone, guess what? The confidence in that situation doesn't help me at all. So I think when you look at somebody who has executive presence, they're generally not afraid to be center of attention. They also feel quite comfortable in change. They like to be leading change and being a part of change. So I think that really is the difference if you had to distinguish the two between this person has confidence and this person has executive presence. Well, executive presence is just that much more than just an individual who demonstrates their confidence and capability.
I see. So it means that confidence is executive presence.
That's correct, yeah.
And that is a very good point.
Mm.
So, what value does developing executive presence have on my career as a leader and high performing individual?
Well, let's be honest, right?
Mm,
Millennials and Generation Zs do not want to be led by an authoritarian style leader. Those
yeah,
days are fundamentally over.
yeah,
So, what does executive presence give you? Well, it allows you to be situational leadership approach. That's what it really starts to give you. It
mm,
allows you to communicate what the person needs to do clearly and concisely. So that's an important thing because nobody can do anything if they don't actually know what direction they need to be going. It allows them to really connect with you because it's also about you being authentic. So one of the things that we really seek in our leaders is authenticity. Because when a leader can show vulnerability and their pros and their cons, and they can own the negative as well as the positive, guess what? It makes us feel a deeper connection with those who are leading us. And if you're going to take me to the trenches when we're in a high pressure situation, who am I going to follow? The person who's aloof and unreal, or the person who really connects with me, makes me feel I'm working in a trustworthy environment, and that's the person I'm going to try and do as much as possible to try and help them in those very, very tough, stressful situations that we sometimes find ourselves in.
mm. Mark, how do you define vulnerability? Because not all the things that we feel vulnerable, we're gonna share with our team members, right?
Yeah.
How can
Look,
we
I
choose?
think
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's also a thing called overshare, right? So
Mhm.
we've got to understand where's the fine balance between sharing and not. I think one
Yeah.
of the things that I always talk to my clients about is don't try and be perfect.
Mm,
Because if we try to be perfect, we will always fail because people will always pick it up and your authenticity would drop. But for example, if you're asking your team members to go out there and go out of their comfort zone and try something new for the first time, that's a great opportunity to show your vulnerability by talking about how you were in a similar situation, maybe a few years back, just like them. And the first time you tried it, it was horrible. It was a massive failure. But what you realize is you got to fail to learn. So I think
mm,
that's a great example of where you can show your vulnerability by saying, listen, I was in a similar situation and it didn't really go well, but I didn't have a nice boss. And it was really a terrible situation. I'm not going to be that boss. It's okay to make mistakes. We just have to make sure we never repeat the mistakes. So I think by sharing that type of vulnerability story of how it makes you real and that you're not this guy who was just amazing wherever you want, that in actual fact, you've made mistakes, but you've kept learning and you have a growth mindset. And I think if you start to show those types of vulnerabilities around who you are, you're going to make a deeper emotional connection with your colleagues. And guess what? Higher levels of emotional connection equals higher levels of engagement. Higher levels of engagement equals higher performance. So it just means that your team is going to be performing at a higher level.
Mm. For a young professional, how can they start to develop their executive presence as one of the first steps?
Well, look, the first thing I need to tell you is you've
Mm,
got to work on your people skills. Number
mm,
one, so start to practice connecting with people.
mm,
Now, as I said, the biggest challenge is sometimes just remembering people's names and getting it right, right? So, you know what tends to happen is because we're too much in our own heads. So, you go
mm,
into, let's say, for instance, you go into a networking event.
mm,
Who likes a networking event? I don't think there's many human beings that really like networking events. Let's be honest, right? But if you go to a networking event, go there with the intention to not make any business. Go there with
mm,
the intention to actually just make connections. How do you
mm,
make a connection? Well, find a little bit more about the person as a human being, not their
mm,
business card and what they literally just do for a living. So then I think when we start to ask a little bit more revealing questions around, where have you been on holiday? What is the thing that you like to do outside of work? What brings you here to the networking event? Two or three questions like that, which gets you a little bit more of a flavor around what their personality and who they really are as human beings, I think you'll start to make better connections. So I think,
mm,
yeah, the reality is start working on your ability to connect with people and to build trust as quickly as possible. I think when you start to have that early on in your career, you'll start to see that you're able to really start to show up as a high performer potential.
mm. I just realized that whenever we come to networking events, we may want to be curious about the other people rather than focusing on sharing about ourselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that is one way that we can consider whenever we want to build executive presence.
100%, right? And
Mm,
then I think the next part is then your
mm,
ability to communicate clearly and concisely.
yeah.
Now, the reason why I use the clearly and concisely is
Mm,
because that's the point. Is we
mm,
can't. I think one of the things is when we get really stressed, we start to ramble. And what
yeah.
I mean by that is we use loads of filler words, and what could have been two sentences becomes 5 minutes, where somebody's
Mm,
literally going, "Oh my God, how do I get away from this? This is too boring. It's not interesting." So
yeah.
sometimes, if anything, less is more. Now, the only way you can start to be very clear and concise is through preparation.
Mm,
So if you're going into situations where you feel like I want to stand out, I want to get my message across, well, then start to ask yourself, who are the people in the room? What type of personalities do they have? Guess
mm,
what? More senior people tend to be very, very abrupt and they want information short, sharp, and quick. I've got colleagues where if I send an email that's longer than one sentence, they don't reply. So I had to learn to make sure that whatever I was asking, I could do it in a very short space of time because that's the amount of time that they have. They can't waste time with rambling. So if you want to really start to show up as somebody who's developing your executive presence, less is more, get
mm.
there quicker.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
realized that communicating in a short way is much more difficult than communicating in a long way.
100%,
Yeah.
because it means that we've had to think things through very, very clearly. And
Mm,
especially if you think about extroverts, what's the
mm,
biggest problem with extroverts? We don't think, we just talk. We talk
mm,
as we think, right? So for me, I had a massive change in my career when I got some great feedback from one of my executive coaches early on. And they're like, look, Mark, you're a strong, confident communicator, but you
mm,
talk too much.
mm,
It takes you too long to get to your point. So
mm.
I would recommend that you try and get there quicker, better, and then you'll get things done a hell of a lot faster.
How did you practice it?
Well, I worked for a great organization where we went through probably
Mm,
about 50 or 60 hours of training, and we were constantly being video recorded. And then after the video recording, you would sit with one of your executive coaches and you would sit down and observe yourself. And I guess the biggest thing about watching yourself on video is That's how the world perceives you, not how you feel. And I think this is the interesting thing as being a communication coach for the last 12 years is people are very, very, very critical on themselves. Guess what? Females even more than men. They
Mm-hmm.
carry a deeper imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of self-doubt because of this one word, trying to be perfect. So a lot of the work I find with people is by seeing yourself in video, as much as it's probably the scariest thing you will ever do, it's the most powerful thing because you'll really start to learn how you are coming across. And generally, guess what? It's usually a lot better than you thought. So many times when my clients come onto my presentation programs, they're like, oh God, I don't want to look. I'm like, I promise you it's going to be. And then they look at it and they're like, wow, I actually didn't look completely like an idiot. I actually came across quite well. Maybe my hands were a little bit stagnant. Maybe my voice was a little bit creaky, but overall, not bad. And I go, well, because, think about this time. I don't know if you probably would have experienced this, maybe many of your listeners. You've gone and given a presentation at work or somewhere else, and then people have given you feedback, and they've been like, oh, wow, that was really great. And then you hear it, but then you obviously dismiss that feedback because you think they're just being nice.
Yeah.
And the reality is in many cases, those people weren't being nice. They actually saw you coming across as fairly credible and quite competent. So I think the biggest thing is to start to realize that we are our biggest enemy. And if we can start to overcome some of the negative demons that we've built up because of how we grew up in our different cultures and our households, you'll start to find that your executive presence starts to grow and you really start to show up in a more authentic and as a stronger leader in whatever it is you're doing.
Mm. Based on your sharing, I just realized one thing, Mark, is self-validation.
Mm.
Yes, because sometimes we just try to validate ourselves too much that it's hard for us to develop our executive presence.
Well, the thing is we set the bar so high that it's
Mm,
almost we can never just be happy and content with what we've done.
mm,
So many times I always tell my clients about the perfection concept,
mm,
where I'll give you an example. One of my clients had the worst night's sleep because her daughter was ill. She had like 3 hours of sleep,
mm,
and she had to give a massive keynote speech in front of 3,000 individuals at work. And
mm,
afterwards, I said, "How did it go?" And she was like, "I was terrible." And I was like, "Oh, shame. What happened?" And then she was like, "Well, I just didn't get people laughing as much." And I was like, "Okay, quick question here. How bad was last night?" And she was probably like one of the worst nights ever. And I'm like, considering all the crazy things that happened, you were still able to get up on stage and deliver a presentation that was actually pretty good. Don't get me wrong, you would have loved to have, hit a home run and blown people away. But guess what? Sometimes the world throws us a curveball, and it's not about always hitting the home run. Sometimes it's just taking stock and being like, you know what? I'm actually really proud that I actually showed so much resilience and self-tact that I got through a very difficult situation with not such a bad result. So I think sometimes we've got to just be a little bit more kinder to ourselves. And I think if we do that, we'll feel more confident to step up and to share our ideas and to maybe put our hand up to lead certain projects because we're actually more confident in how we talk to ourselves. So I think that's a big thing for me. Be kinder in how you talk to yourself, and as a result, you'll probably take more opportunities and raise your profile 10 times more than before.
mm. Be kind to yourself.
Mm.
I see. So that is the key takeaway for our live stream here today. So I think that also an end, a message, a final message from Mr. Mark to our viewers here. I do appreciate so much for your sharing here, Mark. There are so many insights that I can learn from you, and I
Thank you
believe
very
that.
much. I've
Yeah,
loved I've loved the opportunity. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and took some takeaways from this. So yeah, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and the platform to talk
yeah.
today.
More encouraged that the viewers would like to contact you. How can they contact you?
Well, the information, you probably got my details, but you can
Yeah.
also find me. I've got a website called awarenesscommunication.com, but I've spelt it very differently. So it's awareness spelled AWE
And
NESS and then communication.com. Or you can
mm,
just find me on LinkedIn, type
yeah.
my name, Mark the Stadler, on LinkedIn. you'll find all my details there. So I'd love to connect because it's the first time I'm connecting with people in Vietnam. So very excited to do exactly that. So yeah, those would probably be the easiest way to find more information about me and if we can help and support you in any way.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Mark. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in EIY live stream session. And I hope to see you next time. My name is Ann. Bye bye.
Ciao.